I'm sure there's got to be some symbolism of the difficulty of lighting the love candle. Am I right? Love does not come easily. Love is sacrificial. It must be nurtured. It must be protected. It requires the help of more than one person. Am I right? We think that love is so easy. But in reality, it takes a lot of intentionality, doesn't it? Woohoo! Thank you, friends. It truly is a team effort, isn't it? As well it should be. As I've been watching those candles lit, my anticipation has grown for Christmas Eve. And actually, the lighter of the Christ candle is here this morning. I won't give away who that is. But if you have been to a Christmas Eve service, you may have a good idea. One other thing that we'll do, and did you know Christmas Eve is tomorrow? You're welcome. One other thing that we will do tomorrow, we sure invite you to join us, 4 and 5:30, is we will have a whole new batch of 4 different people from among us say something about how they've experienced God's hope, God's peace, God's joy, and God's love as they relight these candles in the procession of the service. And then last, of course, will be lit the long-awaited Christ candle. Jesus really does bring us these gifts. I appreciate especially the courage of today's sharing. Those are not easy things to say. And I know in listening to Chris that it is her heart and her hope that you will feel that she and Ron are approachable to be able to talk about something that a lot of people just don't seem to be able to talk about well. Let's allow the light of Christ into our darkest places. So thank you for your testimony. And thanks for your hard work in lighting this candle. Rod is just staring at that ember of a flame, just wondering what will happen. And so let's just do this. If it goes out, feel free just to jump in there, and we'll have to pour out some wax and light it again. And we'll just be reminded that love takes effort. Amen? I want to invite you to turn to Matthew chapter 2 in a Bible. It was the Sunday before Christmas, and all through the pews, every creature was tired, seated here in their Sunday shoes. Brilliant friends, how is it with your soul today? Is your soul weary and tired, or is your soul drinking from the living water of Jesus Christ? Or both? I have to say, for me, I had someone ask me on Wednesday, a dear friend over coffee, Ken, how are you doing, really? And don't you like that when people add that word, and you know that, and they've been intentional to set a time with you and to really check in and not just say, how do? And I was honestly able to tell my friend, well, things are really well for me in this season. For me, the latter is the answer. Advent for me has been unlike any other Advent that I remember, of being a lot more intentional to stop and to feed my soul and to reflect and to let God speak. It has nothing to do with circumstances for me personally. It just has to do with a sense of God's nearness. And I want you to know that we are still in the season of Advent. We still have a few hours left of preparation. I'm so glad that you're here. Whether you would say that your soul is feeling consolation or desolation or both, Jesus Christ is here to speak to your condition. And it's my prayer that as we continue with the balance of this worship, and even as we worship again together tomorrow evening, that we come with that sense of readiness for God to fill, for God to speak, to allow him to speak over us his gifts of love and joy and peace and hope. Today I'm inviting us to consider the example of the wise men. The wise men who journeyed some 900 miles from modern-day Iran or Iraq, depends on which scholar you ask, over to Bethlehem, or probably Nazareth, but that's another story. As they journeyed, I would imagine they were a strange mixture of both, don't you? They must have been elated, and they must have been exhausted. Can we identify? But nothing deterred them from their pursuit of worshiping Jesus. Would you stand with me at this time as you're able? I want to read from the scripture and invite the Lord to encourage us with their example of persistence. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who's been born the King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard of this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. "In Bethlehem in Judea," they replied. Isn't it interesting that they knew? "For this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means the least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me so that I too may go and worship him." After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother, Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, and, having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. May God bless the reading of his word among us, those who are seeking him at this time. Please be seated. I think we're probably all familiar with the Christmas song, "I'll Be Home for Christmas." But in reality, it seems like nothing could be further from the truth. All of us, it seems, as many as a third of Americans travel for the holiday, and Teresa and I are among them. We literally get to travel on the holiday. We love staying here for Christmas Eve service, but it always means the morning of Christmas we depart. And in the early days, there was nothing open for food. We would have our Christmas lunches of corn dogs from the gas station along the route, 8-hour drive to Grandma's house over the river and through the woods. We made some great memories breaking down cars and finding yellow jackets in our snowsuits, trying to put chains on. Unforgettable times. Have you ever noticed as you open the pages of Scripture that hardly anyone was home there either? Now, of course, Jesus is the furthest from home. He's traveled all the way from his throne room in heaven to occupy a manger. But others are not home either. Even the shepherds have left their sheep to go see what's going on. Imagine the riot among the sheep that must have happened as they left their responsibilities. We know that the wise men traveled. Mary and Joseph are not home. They're from the region of Galilee over into Judea. They probably traveled some 90 miles. Difficult journey without vehicles and so forth. But the wise men traveled some 900 miles. And I want us to think about the wise men for a few minutes here as a picture of what it means to pursue Jesus, as a picture of what it means to give to him. What does the road to Jesus look like? Well, for them, number one, the road to Jesus looks like giving him our attention. The road to Jesus requires our attention. And I think this is important to point out because I've invited you already to slow down and stop and be intentional in the next few hours to notice Jesus. That's one of our biggest challenges, I think, amidst the many distractions of this world. You know, when we truly love someone, we go after their attention. I remember falling for Teresa when I was a 19-year-old. And in my goofiness, in my awkwardness as a 19-year-old, the way that I would reach out to her, it seems so strange now, is that I would tease her. Can any of you identify? I don't know if teasing is a love language. I still do. Which means I'm still pursuing her. I want your attention. I haven't matured enough to find it in other ways sometimes. But I would tease her. And Teresa would actually say, I really wasn't sure when you were serious. I don't know how she stuck around in spite of myself. But I would tease her. When you love someone, you go after their attention. God put a star in the sky for these stargazers to notice. The Magi were Chaldeans. They came from modern-day Iran or Iraq. They were outsiders. They were certainly not from the line of Abraham, but they knew the heavens, the stars. And there appeared apparently a star unlike any other star that they had known. There's some incredible irony in this passage. The stargazers from afar show up to Jerusalem and they ask, where's Jesus? And it creates a stir among them. And then they explain what's going on. It's interesting that the insiders, those who live in Jerusalem, they go to Jerusalem of all places, the center of worship at the time, and they've all missed it. They're not honoring Jesus. They don't have gifts that they're ready to present to the king. It's the outsiders who travel with this star that leads them to this place that are ready to worship. The insider that seems to get it is Herod. We know he gets it because he's very threatened, right? He wants to eliminate this potential king. There's irony there that those who should be able to see Jesus don't, and those who you wouldn't expect to see Jesus do. Where are you? Where is your heart? What are you noticing? What are you focused on in this season? I want you to agree, just see if you agree with this. A star is actually a very subtle sign. Would you agree with that? I mean, after all, the shepherd's got an angel, followed by a whole host of angels telling him what's going on. Zechariah got an angel. Joseph got an angel. Mary got Gabriel. These are dramatic signs with audible words we would understand, or a dream, explaining to them exactly what was going on. Wouldn't you say that a star is more open to misinterpretation? It's a more subtle sign. Why would God speak through a star? Well, as we know, these were stargazers. You know what it tells me? It tells me that God is able to speak our language. What an encouragement. It really doesn't matter. If you didn't grow up understanding the message of Jesus, Jesus can still find you. He can still speak your language. And if somehow you have wandered from Jerusalem, 900 miles east, you are not somewhere that God doesn't see you. You're not somewhere where God's voice cannot reach your heart. Are you praying for loved ones? Are you praying for loved ones who have not bended the knee to Jesus? Praying that God would reach them. I see great encouragement here. God knows how to get our attention. Actually, God prepared the Chaldeans for his birth centuries ahead of time. Their prophet goes by the name Belshazzar. Do you know who that is? It's Daniel. Long story, but it's 600 years before any of this happens. It's an amazing thing. God knows how to speak our language. So, if you haven't heard God's voice, if somehow you've been wandering away, I wonder if it isn't a good time to look up. It's Christmas. I wonder if it isn't a good time to humble ourselves and quiet ourselves and say, Lord, what is it that you're wanting to speak to me? I'm so thankful that God allows us to journey home, aren't you? This is the story of Christmas, that God came near. We call it the Incarnation. John chapter 1 says that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was God in the beginning. And then in 1 John, he explains it this way: that which was from the beginning, that which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, which we have looked at with our hands and touched. Well, that's what we're proclaiming to you. That's what we're testifying about. That's what can give you the gift of eternal life. But there's an interesting transition between John 1 and 1 John 1, and it's this. In John 1, in the beginning was the Word, is the imperfect tense of the Greek. In other words, God always existed before the manger. God's always been existed. And then in 1 John 1, he talks about a change. He uses the aorist tense for those of us who like languages. The past tense. Do you know what that means? We've already seen him with our eyes. We've already heard him with our ears. We've already touched him. The eternal broke into the reality of 3 dimensions and became flesh, and now it's a done deal. God has shown up. It's profound. This is what Christmas is all about. Are we paying attention? Are we noticing? God is most fully revealed in Jesus Christ. That, a neuter pronoun, which was from the beginning, became him, Jesus. Blows our minds. In a few minutes, I want to take a moment for some reflection, to invite you to pause before Jesus and just listen to what he may be saying to you personally. We call this open worship. Quieting ourselves. This may be the hardest gift for all of us to bring, our attention. We're so attention deficit, aren't we? During open worship, I invite you to prayerfully ask, how has God been speaking to me? And what will be the focus of my attention this week? Do you know when you come back next week, you'll be one day away from 2019? You're welcome. This very week, to me, it just seems so many permanent memories are made. Am I wrong? Precious time with your family. Don't let it just go by. Be fully present to Jesus in these moments. Give him your attention. The road to Jesus also requires, and the stargazers were paying attention, personal sacrifice. Now, the price that these travelers paid, traveling through hostile tribes, traveling across the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, going across trackless deserts until they finally get to Jerusalem. And when they get to Jerusalem, they still haven't found him. But all along the way, they do not give up. They have placed themselves in harm's way. It's one thing to start out pursuing Jesus. It's another thing to keep going. We're all great starters. We're not always great finishers. Verse 11 says, on coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and they worshiped him. They opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, incense, and of myrrh. It's a great reminder to us that Christmas really isn't about us. I think it's wonderful if you've got very thoughtful gifts that you want to give to your loved ones. But isn't it true that Jesus ought to be the main focus? We did something a little different with our open house. We put happy birthday, and we had a little plaque, happy birthday, Jesus, and we had cupcakes for an open house. We're just trying to call attention to the fact that this is Jesus' birthday. What does Jesus want from you? I'm pretty sure he wants your attention. I'm pretty sure he wants you to give of yourself. Because following Jesus is not an easy road. We actually got to travel some of the path that the wise men would have traveled. And they would have traveled along what's known as the King's Highway along the mountains. uh, whenever they could, because there's more safety there, and there's more water there, and there's more everything else there. But I just want you to know, it's not like traveling I-84. It's arduous. It's sacrificial. It costs us something. What I notice about verse 11 that I just read to you, it's printed in your outlines, is the order or the sequence. And I'll invite you to write this down. The wise men first gave of themselves. When they saw the Christ child, they fell down and they worshiped him, and then they gave him their treasures. Do you know that you're invited to worship Jesus before you have anything to give? I just want you to know that. That's really what he wants from you, yourself. He made you to love you. I love that they worship him before they give him their gifts, but I think that's a little overlooked in this whole story, don't you? All that we tend to remember is that they brought certain things, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And I have frankincense and myrrh in my office. If you want to smell it, I'll let you smell it. It's pretty cool stuff, actually. We bought it at a little gift shop in Jordan called the Three Kings gift shop. But it's real stuff. It's kind of interesting. I'm just missing the gold. The gold's not there. I don't know. But they gave their hearts before they gave their treasures. They worshiped him, and then they gave the gifts. In this Max Lucado study that many of us have been walking through in Advent, he pointed out something, and someone actually mentioned to me, it's on your December 19th on your calendars. The fact that the angels gave an impractical gift. That's the way Max Lucado says it. Well, the gold, frankincense, and myrrh were expensive items. They could be used to pay for this trip to escape down to Egypt. That was very practical. The shepherds offered at least company. I don't remember what all he said. But the angels who knew Jesus from the very beginning, what did they choose to give him? What did they think to give him? All that the angels gave him was worship. Don't you love that? I mean, what is it that Jesus wants from us more than anything? I think the angels probably knew. But I noticed it here. I probably need to tell Max. The wise men worshiped him too. The road to Jesus requires faith. Verse 9, after they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen in the east went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. That's an interesting detail, isn't it? The star followed them. And to me, it's such a picture of faith and this life. We can only see so far in front of us. We have to move to see something else that's in front of us at that time. We have to keep moving in order to keep seeing. The star kept moving as they kept moving. And that's what our life is like. We may not know what God wants us to do 3 steps from now, and that's okay. We're not 3 steps from now yet. We simply rely on him day by day by day, and we continue to follow him. If we could use the shepherding analogy, all that we have to do to be led by the good shepherd is stay within earshot of his voice. Just keep going. Just keep following. Just keep taking another step. It's a beautiful picture of what faith is. What step has God called you to take next? I wonder, is there anything you sense God calling you to do? Maybe within the past year. I know it's resolution time. Is there something God's called you to do within the past year? It's just about putting yourself in the way of hearing God. There's lots of ways to do that. We call those spiritual disciplines. At the end of your notes on the back side, I offered a resource that one of our elders mentioned to me a week or 2 ago. It's a reading plan for 2019. It's something that I'm going to try. It's a little different than last year's reading plan. Don't be afraid of it. You'll notice that right away. It's a different reading plan. Have a plan, whatever it is. That's what I'm going to talk about next Sunday. But have a plan, whatever that plan is. Put yourself in the way of listening to what God has to say. Practice spiritual disciplines. Someone called spiritual disciplines dating vocations. Show up. Connect. Jesus longs to connect. It went out. Did you notice that? I just saw Ron's eyes looking over here. Go ahead and light it. We got to have this thing lit. Go ahead. Fourth, it requires humility. Thank you, friend. It requires humility. The picture of the wise men says in verses 10 to 11, and when they saw the star, they were overjoyed. But their response doesn't stop there. So many people have a verse 10 response to Christmas, but not a verse 11 response. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and they worshiped him. And I don't know what that bowing necessarily looked like, but I picture them falling on their face. How about you and I? Will we be thrilled this Christmas without being changed? I pray that it's more than an emotional experience to us. I pray that it's a life-changing kind of experience to us. The advent of Jesus Christ. In our society, so many people gush and blush at the cute baby in the manger, but they want nothing to do with the Savior who went to the cross and who is now risen again. His first advent was in a manger. His second advent will be in the clouds. Nobody will miss it. He's coming back as Lord. Do we honor him that way? They bowed down and they worshiped him. So I've offered a few questions along the way, and I'm going to offer the next several minutes for open worship, a time for us to stop, a time for us simply to listen. If you're not familiar with open worship, in the inside of the brown hymnals, there are actually some really helpful instructions that are there. For example, perhaps you already feel prompted to speak. I think that's wonderful. But we always want to give space for everyone to listen first. We always want to not assume that we need to speak, but maybe listen to what somebody said behind us and on the other side of us. So as someone walks a microphone to you, there's a pause. We don't like to pause in this world anymore, do we? We're just in a hurry. Why couldn't we have 3 mics in here so we can just boom, boom, boom? It's intentional. We often have busy experiences in our lives, but we don't stop and reflect on them and ask, what was the meaning? We want to take time for open worship this morning to allow the Lord to speak to us about any part of this worship that has touched us. How is God speaking to you? Any part of this past week, how is God speaking to you? And to reflect on that and to take time to listen. To bring us into this time, I want to read something from a book called The Life of Christ by Fulton Sheen. In the filthiest place in the world, a stable, purity was born. He who was later to be slaughtered by man, acting as beast, was born among beasts. He who would call himself the living bread descended from heaven and was laid in a manger, literally a place for the animals to eat. There was no room in the inn, but there was room in the stable. The inn was a gathering place of public opinion, the focal point of the world's moods, the rendezvous of the worldly, the growing place of the popular and the successful, but the stable is a place for outcasts, ignored and forgotten. The world might have expected the Son of God to be born, and if he was to be born at all, it would be at the inn. The stable would be the last place in the world where one would have looked for him. But divinity is always where one least expects to find it. No worldly mind would have suspected that he, who would make the sun warm and the earth, would one day have need of an ox and a donkey to warm him and their breath. That he who clothed the fields with grass would himself be naked. That he from whose hand hung the planets and the world would one day have tiny arms that were not long enough to touch the heads of the cattle. That the feet which trod the everlasting hills would one day be too weak to walk. And that the eternal word would be silent, and the omnipotence would be wrapped in swaddling clothes, and salvation would lie in a manger. No one would have ever suspected that God, coming to this earth, would ever be so helpless. And that is precisely why so many miss him. Divinity is always where one least expects to find it.